Hello, welcome to Analysts Gone Wild. We're on episode 31. We're going to analyze some great enterprise software stories today, and Robert Kramer with more insights and strategy. Kind of introduce the gentleman on the call today with me. Let's start with Charles. Tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about how you've been doing.
Hey, thank you, Robert. Thank you guys for having me on. Name's Charles Brennan. I'm an analyst in nucleus research. Those of you who aren't familiar, we're a global provider of technology research and advisory services that focuses on return on investment. And that's mainly done through end user conversations. And I manage everything from operational business application perspective. So think ERP, supply chain, MES. So that falls within my wheelhouse. And, like I said, happy to be here to discuss the topics today.
Thank you, John. How about yourself?
Hey, John Reed, Diginomica. Nice to be back to see you guys. Saw some of you on the road. That was cool. Co-founder Diginomica, spent a lot of time really on real world transformation issues, and mostly this summer been in the AI deep dive zone. So I don't know if I learned anything or just got drunk on algorithms, but we'll find out in a few minutes.
Okay, Michael.
Sure. Founder and CEO of Arian Research, formed this company about 4 years ago. And, focused on enterprise apps for years, but over the last couple of years, we've really gone deep and focused around agentic AI and its intersection with CX and a few other areas, but particularly around its impact on customers. And I have to say, every time you introduce this, I feel like we're supposed to go wild. I should scream and jump up and down or something. I don't know. Maybe we should do that next time. What do you think?
You whatever you want. Sam.
Yeah, and I don't know, Michael, how that is going to fit with the theme of being grumpy and jumping. I don't know. I mean, maybe that will work. I mean, we should try it.
Grumpy gone wild. That's okay.
Grumpy guy.
All right, guys. I'm Gupta, Elevate IQ. Our focus is enterprise software. For the most part, we are a buy-side advisory firm, host of WBS Talks as well. Over to you, Robert.
Great. So, we had some pretty good stories today, and I see we have Salesforce in here twice, two different ones. And just to kind of touch a little bit about Salesforce, they revealed details of their new marketing cloud next. But what's interesting is I've been following them all year, and I know, Michael, you do as well, and then the other gentleman on the phone here. But they've, as we talk about the marketing cloud next, I think it's important to kind of fall back on all the acquisitions they've made. So as I'm looking at it, maybe I'm on target, but maybe a little bit, not 100% if I am or not, but they've bought in 6 companies, and they're getting, well, I think they're closing on 6 companies, or they've put acquisition targets on Convergence, Informatica, MoonHub, Way, Bluebirds, and the last one, which was a couple of days ago, Reglio. And all these do something different. So I think it's important, as we talk about Salesforce, how does all this go into the mix with the things that they're doing? So the details on the new marketing cloud next, I think, is an important part, obviously, to what they do with more automation for the customers. But Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, I think as I looked at this, I think it's a very logical place to look for automation, right? I mean, that's been one of the things that we've talked about around Agentforce since they launched, and its ability to help automate some of those interactions to make it a better experience for the customer. It seems like a logical thing that I'd want to be able to support conversations rather than just one-way comms. I guess the proof will be in how well does it work, but I think it's interesting, and you're right. They've acquired a lot of products. One of the good things I think they did over the last few years finally was kind of take the core clouds and make sure they were all integrated and sitting on a single data cloud, which has been a big improvement for them, and facilitates automation like this. So,
yeah, John or Charles?
Well, I was at the Salesforce Connection show where this was actually formally announced, and it was interesting to be on the ground and talk with folks, including Salesforce CMO, on this. And I agree with what Michael said. And I think what I like about this is the aspirational vision of it, because the end of do not reply marketing is really interesting, right? Because how many times have you received an email from a brand and replied and got the whole kickback bounce, like your opinion doesn't matter, here's your great personalized offer, but we don't really care about you and we can't really respond to you. So think about the challenge of actually responding to that at scale using agentic technology. That's really interesting, right? Because humans could never have done that. You could never open yourself up to that and say everyone can just respond and we'll interact with them. So how can you really do that? But what I kind of pointed out to Salesforce is that you're really raising the bar here, like for yourself and for brands, because if you promise that, then you also have to deliver on it, right? Nothing's worse than saying, oh, now we can listen and interact, and the interactions are unsatisfactory and the experiences are unsatisfactory. So that's where I see the ambition and the pitfalls in all of this. But it's a really good gut check for Salesforce, because they have to, Robert, to your point, all those things can't operate in acquisition silos as new pieces of tech. It all has to work seamlessly on behalf of the individuals who interact with those systems. But if you can do it, we know that more personalized commerce does lead to better bottom line results. So that's one of the most promising areas that we have. So it'd be interesting to watch this play out.
But don't you think all this hinges on just fantastic data? I mean, if the data is not good, you're going to have bad. The agents are going to be interacting with data that isn't really helping the customers out.
Well, just real quick on that. Yes, of course. Like, I mean, this generation of AI, like we could have a longer conversation about sort of the disappointment around GPT-5 and all the fallout from that. But this generation of AI in the enterprise, to get a different result than that, requires quality data, both industry specific and customer specific, to give what you're talking about, Robert. But I would caution you to not limit it only to data, because
correct,
because it has to also have a seamless process flow. And just because there's a misconception that just because you're feeding quality data into an AI system, it's going to give a great result. That's not always the case.
Well, the agent studio has to be set up. Well, I guess that's Agentforce has to be set up in a way where it's the processes and the workflows are appropriate. But I think it's, to your point, John, and we'll kind of move on to Charles, but there's a lot of setup, and you have to dot the I's and cross the T's. You can't just put the data in, get it correct, and push a button.
I mean, to your point there, Robert, isn't that kind of, I think, what drove the acquisition of Informatica, in my opinion?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think really to kind of wrap this up, I think as we were talking about, this is kind of the next logical step. AI agents kind of taking on these type of tasks, kind of the low-hanging fruit, but I think at the moment, marketing automation isn't really new. A lot of other vendors, think of the HubSpots, Oracles of the world, have provided some sort of, personalization for marketing. But I think what's interesting here is, having these agents act, not just assist in this, is going to be interesting. And going back to all the points we discussed earlier, again, will be interesting to see how it plays out. I think Salesforce has a ton on their hands right now. So.
Before we go to Sam, what's interesting is I also think that companies don't feel that marketing is an asset, and then they feel that the executives, that things like this can replace the humans. I don't think it can 100%. I think that, you see these marketing departments on these, billion-dollar companies going from like 100 people to 5, and I don't think they can operate appropriately. Marketing is an asset. These are efficiency tools to make their jobs easier, so the campaigns are more fluid and efficient, not to replace the people, because the ideas still have to be come up with.
Yeah. I mean, the right paradigm is really to think about agents as another member of your team, and you want to have a collaborative relationship between humans and agents. And the agent can handle some things and do it well, and the humans handle some things and do them well, and you need both.
Yeah. So Sam, it's 9.5 minutes in and you haven't really talked. So.
That might be a record.
That's a record. I was like, wow.
Yeah, seriously, we are doing really good today. Okay, so some of the questions that I'm going to have, since you guys have seen the demo and spoken to the CMO as well, I believe, right? So I was thinking maybe you guys have a lot more intel here. Personally, I have not done much of the research in this particular case. But, is this just a marketing claim when they are saying it's going to be the end of traditional do not reply marketing? And what does it mean? Am I, as the user, am I not going to have that unsubscribe button on my email? Does it mean that? Some comments related to your HubSpot versus I think you mentioned one more platform there, Charles. But generally, the real difference between Salesforce marketing platform versus the other marketing automation platform was how they were constructed. For example, Salesforce had acquired this product, right? So the real integration wasn't there. It was literally a field between two different systems. That's how light the integration was. And now here we are talking about native. Are we talking about building this on top of Salesforce objects? That's a game changer. Are we talking about the real website integration, the way HubSpot was able to do? That's a game changer. So are we talking about all of that? I don't know. Maybe you guys can help me here.
Well, I can just quickly answer on that. I think I kind of addressed part of that, but it's an aspirational thing. It's not, you're not going to end do not reply marketing anytime soon, and Salesforce knows that. But it's a good hook. It catches attention into the conversation, and it illustrates, I think, the potential to do that at scale. Whether or not brands will get there anytime soon. We have some peanut gallery guys in the chat, Brian and Josh, some of my compadres, pointing out that Salesforce isn't anywhere near that at present, and that's the challenge that we face with hyper personalization. And to your point, Sam, it does have to be as natively integrated as possible. And one of the big topics at Connections was Salesforce feels it has made a lot of progress in that area. Mm-hmm. However, now you have new acquisitions in play that have to be put into that too.
Yeah, and I mean it shows the problem, I think, from what Brian and Josh both say, and probably all of us. How many emails did you get this week that either had the wrong name or had insert name here as a greeting? Of course, it's a problem, but it is this is an evolution of it. Will it make it better? I think once it demonstrates that it can fully work, yeah, it'll make it better. And I don't think, Sam, you mentioned unsub. You always have to put unsubscribe on email marketing. So, I mean, that's not going to change, but maybe what changes is I could just reply to it and not get you can't reply to this, and have a conversation around why I want to unsubscribe.
Yeah, I think the ability to have the conversation is the most important, but to the point, we'll see how this plays out. And now I don't think it's really the end of that, one-way marketing too, but I think given the customers the ability to conversate with the company, is just a better way to increase that customer retention, stuff of that nature. So it'd be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, and I guess part of having a do not reply, changing that into people that reply, you have to get people to reply. So it's not a one-way thing, right? I mean, you can still blast things out and they can reply if they want to. Will they? I mean, I guess we'll see.
Just as one other thing on Salesforce, I've used Salesforce. I'm an ex marketing person, and we had SAP and Salesforce, and to get it to the level that you can actually have exceptional use of Salesforce, I think is a tough thing. So I mean, John, you might have more insights, or Michael, but the companies that use it, there's so much data coming from like SAP, and there's so many people putting things in on the sales front on the Salesforce side to get this thing to work like it's meant to be. I don't think this is an easy act, but I think the end result can be great, but I think there's a lot of governance involved in who can put what in and what fields need to be done, because I think there's a lot of error opportunities, and I think the company I work for, we found them. So,
well, Robert, I have great news. Your other Salesforce piece that we're supposed to get to in the show addresses that very problem. So there's another press release coming.
Yeah. Well, that's good. So we'll hold on to that, go to the next one. But there's still a challenge to get that done. But I do like what you're saying. So let's go to
and honestly, one more quick thing, because Charles said this earlier, and I think this is really important. The fact that Informatica brings data automation into the data cloud, and that's going to start to help solve some of these problems, because it's hard. I mean, data is hard. Getting the right data is hard. Getting the right data in the right place is hard. And the more you can automate, the more you can do, the better that's going to be for the customers.
Yep. That's a good point.
Hey, Robert, so before we go to the next one, I guess let's cover these comments. And these comments are really, really interesting, to be completely honest, and some of them are super funny. So I definitely want to get to those. But at the same time, guys, if you're in the audience, we love your comments. We are not always going to have all the answers. Sometimes you might have some answers, so post those. We would love to cover them. Now, the first thing, screaming. Sounds like we have user feedback here. This is live interaction, guys, from the marketing perspective, and this works. So yeah, we need to do a little bit of screening. All right, seamless integration is always the problem with acquisitions. It usually looks better on paper than in reality. That is always going to be a problem.
Well, can I mention something?
Yeah, please.
Because I used to work for a pretty large company and $10 billion company, and we would acquire people, and then they'd have like 10 marketing people, and they're like, well, what are we supposed to do? Like there's no there's no teams that do they have to have like a formal plan, like with employees, with the software, with what's the benefits tell the customers about it, how it's going to be used. There's like no transparency, and I think it's a major problem. But hopefully Salesforce, with these 6 acquisitions that they're doing, has that under wraps. But I do think I've seen the worst case scenario, so I don't know. It's a problem, I think, Joshua.
Yeah, and in Salesforce's case, I think it was just not seamless, I guess. It was very, very light integration. That's where the major problem is. Hopefully they can figure that out.
But I think the integration isn't just the software, it's the
people.
Yeah.
And the process.
100%.
Everything.
Yeah.
And understanding that software and all the caveats of it and how it's going to be used, I don't think it's not black and white at all.
And I think ultimately how the acquisition kind of fits into that long-term play of saying, hey, maybe as for example, the Informatica employees, how they kind of fit in with the long-term goal at Salesforce. And Robert brings up a great point there. I think that needs to be more transparent from all ends, really.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so Brian has, a comment, and his comments are generally best in the world, I guess. So I want to make sure that I am reading that for our audio listeners. And I don't know if I'm going to do the justice on that, and you can fire the radio guy if you like. But here is the comment. Any chance Salesforce could buy a company that correctly inserts my name in all junk spam, entreaties I get? I have had 2 this week addressed to me, but the personalized email thinks I am some lady named Suzanne. Just wondering.
So here's look, I mean, Brian is legendary for calling out the flaws in this kind of thinking, and so there you go. And that was the peanut gallery I was referring to earlier, and I don't say that in a condescending way because usually I'm out in the cheap seats saying the same thing. So, but look, I did a whole series of videos with Thomas Wiebernot on hyper personalization because I'm kind of obsessed with this topic. And the problem that brands run into is the so-called overreach. And I think email is particularly tough because you're really on some level guessing the context of that individual, because even if that individual wanted something the day before, they might have resolved that issue by that the next day, and having to pick in an email form exactly what your prospect or your customer wants is so incredibly difficult. I'm much more bullish on hyper personalization in other contexts. So, for example, I think the YouTube algorithm for me personally is pretty brilliant, and I've spent a lot of time discussing why it is. But one of the reasons is it doesn't have the pressure to show me just one video. It shows me a range of stuff I might be interested in. And one of the things I'd like to see agentic technology do is not try to guess what the customer wants, but interact with that customer to better understand their preferences, store that information, and then act on that information. And I don't understand why vendors aren't spending more time on developing that, because why not just ask me? Because you have a conversational interface now. So instead of, remember those forms where you always pick like 5 publications, how many times you wanted it? It was all these elaborate check boxes, and then you forgot it and could never manage it. Well, just use an agent and say, how often do you want to be contacted? What would you like to hear about? All of that. Yep. And instead of guessing on it, use the conversation to gather the information and then act on that. But most brands don't want to do that because they want to show how smart their AI is at guessing what you want. Well, I got news for you. The context constantly changes. And you're never going to get it. It's never going to happen.
Great comments, guys. So we have some more, and Josh is usually called name. Josh, maybe think about branding a little bit. You need to probably have a name, I guess. Good to see. Okay, on the call name. Okay, so one more comment here. So Informatica as an integration company should technically not present the usual problems, but it's the people and process side, as you said, that's often the real issue. And Robert, you are a big fan of change management. I guess that's what these people are talking about.
Well, yeah, I think it's particularly the change management, but also the transparency. Like I said, like these people are just like sitting on, like in the dugout waiting to get called in, and nobody knows they're in the dugout. So I think it's a problem that companies like acquire, but they don't implement the people. And, the change management is part of the people and the processes and the software. But they have to know right now how they're going to use Informatica. They have to know right now how they're going to use, the other acquisitions. I think they're trying to fill the void. I think it's a big deal. Or do you build, do you buy, or do you partner? So they're buying. So,
seems like every big player is doing that right now. Yeah.
So, and that it's just, it's a race to the finish line. They have a lot of competition, and the competition's fierce. What's interesting is, I'll throw this out there. Do you all think that Salesforce will be acquired by a larger company? I know Oracle tried to buy them, years ago, and it fell through. But does this smell like that with the ERP changing? Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm not too sure about that, to be completely honest. Robert, I don't know if anybody else is going to have any comment on that.
I mean, I would just say no. I don't think that's something that's in the works. I mean, they've certainly gone down a path that makes sense for them to stay as an entity, and we've seen this discussion before, but at this point they're very large, and maybe, but I doubt. I don't think.
I think someone will have to pay close to $500 billion, close to 500 billion, because the market cap right now is around 230, 240 billion. Yeah, someone will have to pay a pretty penny to get together at this moment. Yeah. Good amount.
Right now, the obvious trend is older established vendors snapping up AI companies, either for talent or technology or both. And I think that's going to be the prevailing trend for some time to come.
Yeah. So if they get bought, you guys can all come back to me, and we'll see what happens. I do think it's realistic. Because there's a new ERP going to come out in the next, 5 years. And I think that companies like CRM companies will do better inside that new ERP versus outside.
That is a good point.
So, but we'll see. But that price you just said is probably overvalued and not worth it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But I don't know. We'll see. Okay. Should we go to the next one, or we got more questions?
Some more comments. Just some more comments, Robert. Just 2 minutes. So, Josh, obviously Gupta ERP is already taken, but I don't know whether you know this or not. Gupta ERP is also very good at branding. So, if you're looking for a name, it can help you with that. I'll go to that.
Tell us a little bit about Gupta ERP. What
just a parody, of the ERP industry. I don't know. I think a lot of you have seen those posts, right? So
yeah, they look good.
It's all parody. It's all fun. Gupta ERP can do pretty much anything that you can possibly imagine. Anything. Including cleaning your laundry.
That sounds good to me.
Okay. So Brian has a comment here to John's point that something may no longer be of interest to a customer is spot on. I once bought my late father a CD collection of country western standards. A CRM system is still suggesting I buy more of this stuff over 10 years. Later, forget, do not reply. Can we get please forget past history? Any comments on that?
I mean, this is an ongoing problem, and I my example has always been I'm a serious photographer, and I bought a lot of photography equipment. But one time I made a mistake on Amazon. I bought a $149 point and shoot digital camera for my mom, and now that's all I get from them is ads for $149 point and shoot cameras, which I have one. I didn't need another one.
Yeah. Okay. So one more comment here. To be serious for a second, I think Salesforce and Workday will one day merge. They'll need to fill out the end-to-end process gaps in what they each now provide. That's a very interesting comment. I don't know if anybody is going to have take on that.
I'll just comment on that real quick. I mean, obviously that's one of the most logical sort of complementary product sets in enterprise software. So that's whenever you see like pictures of Anil and Mark Benioff running into each other at like a grocery store or whatever, like a whole new viral wave of speculation comes off. But right now, both of those platform companies are so busy trying to deal with AI enabling what they're doing to prevent themselves from becoming vulnerable on that side that I don't think they're really talking about it. And I think what Salesforce would say is that their collaboration through so-called Agentforce is going to provide that process access without the need to actually merge at this point in time. Whether that will be true remains to be seen. I mean, that's one of the fascinating things about the next few years, because I have some real questions as to whether agents will provide the kind of seamless interaction that is being promoted at this point in time across products. But that would be the argument that Salesforce and Workday would make against merging at this point in time.
Yep.
Yeah, great point, guys. If you want to move to the story, Robert, I'll bring it over for you.
Yeah, Cordial, they introduced a price sensitivity feature, which I do like this, and it's I believe it's within their Edge AI, predicts every customer's likelihood to react to discounts, but it focuses on a little bit on their behavior, their buying patterns and purchases, and marketers can really look at how which each shopper and personalize whether they get discounts or not. So I think this complements some of the existing tools they have, specifically in the industries of retail and consumer brands and travel, et cetera. Thoughts?
I think this answer is like, tries to answer that age-old question of, trying to maximize, revenue and margin without alienating customers on price in the retail world, right? I think traditionally organizations looked at, whether the customers were deal seekers or loyalists and whatnot. But now, once again, this is kind of doing that on that personal level, on an individualized level. I think it is a great tool, right? If a company doesn't have a ton of, resources to put towards a data science team, they can deploy a tool like this. I think about like a small retail and apparel company. But this thing comes down to, customers are pretty unpredictable, right? Maybe they want to buy things a lot one year and the next year things change. So it is a bit tricky, but overall, I think it's an interesting tool for small companies to utilize.
Yeah, I just recently interviewed somebody from Pros, and we were talking about pricing optimization and pricing dynamics, and dynamic pricing type systems. And it's an interesting one because from the perspective of the company, optimization means something completely different than what it does to a customer, right? And so there's a big balance there. You have to be able to demonstrate value for value, not just, gee, I'm going to squeeze every bit of margin out of a customer that I can get. Not if I'm trying to build a relationship and go into this in a way that is somewhat transparent and somewhat meets the needs of both the company and the customer.
Yeah, good point.
So,
John, or do you got something you want to say first, Sam? Go ahead.
John, do you want to?
Oh, well, just real quick, yeah, and I think Michael makes a really good point too, which is customers are motivated by different things, because I think some customers are much more price motivated, and I think like in most cases, I'm more value motivated. I'm looking for long-term relationships, but I recognize a lot of my peers are a little more pricey oriented, and there's not one right or wrong way, but obviously if you get this right, it's going to have material impact, and I like the focus on it, but as these folks have pointed out, we've kind of covered some of the pitfalls of trying to over guess where people are at. So it's tricky, but yeah, ideally, why would you offer me a discount if you knew that I was willing to pay full price? You might rather not offer me the discount, but anyway, It's hard to say. But if I find out that my friend got the discount and I didn't, I'm going to be a little annoyed.
Yep.
Yeah. So to John, to your point, I guess, I mean, in general, when you talk about this issue, and in my mind, I would put this into more of the dynamic pricing issue. A lot of companies have tried this in the past. There have been a lot of technologies, super cutting edge. Obviously, they have to be, right? Everything. But at the same time, I guess it's more than technology, this pricing issue. The reason for that is because you have channel conflicts, you have politics, you have vendor conflicts. And because of that, 90% of these technologies very rarely work. Now, is AI going to have any sort of impact? It's interesting. It can do a lot more compared to what your legacy options presented, but we are going to find out, I guess. How it is going to manage the politics is going to be my question.
I think those are good points.
Okay, do you want to go to the next one, or what do you want to do?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that is within this pricing is the consumer behavior. I think you have to know your customers, or who you're selling to. It's a pivotal component of that. Do you all think that that's a part of this, or not necessarily?
I mean, that's one of the big opportunities that we've seen around using AI to analyze, real-time data, streaming data, behavioral analysis to help, understand behavior and maybe even predict future behavior based on certain actions. So it's an interesting one. It's still early, but yeah, I think it's important.
And I think an interesting thing too, Robert, we're talking about change management earlier as well. Think about marketing teams that have been, doing certain things for so long. Now they, have the ability to kind of get these AI generated insights, but now how are they going to incorporate them into their pricing and campaign decisions, right? Are they going to rely on it fully, partially, if at all? So I think that's an interesting part too, is how organizations are actually going to feel with the, recommendations this tool provides as well. So.
Yeah, and that kind of leads us into the Salesforce releases, Agentforce 3. I still come back to what I talked about in the first Salesforce, that marketing is an asset, and they have to be these are just tools to help them perform, right? Not to get rid of them. But they, like you all said, that agents can be one of the marketing people. So I think that John and Michael will have a little bit more to say than I will about this, but the Agentforce is obviously a big thing for Salesforce, and they have Agentforce 3, which is dealing with enterprise-grade AI agent adoption for customer service and back office automation. I think John was alluding to that previously. They have features include Command Center, which is a full observability, which I think is a big deal, the control for the AI agents. The MCP, the tool for standardization, and they're able to have 100 plus ready industry agents, et cetera. So, and for specific, types of service that you want the agents to do. So, John and Michael, what do you guys think?
I mean, I think there's two. You hit on MCP, and I think that's really important. But there's two things about agents that are like one of many friction points, but big friction points. One of them is agents that do things need to use tools. The only way they can use tools is if they're integrated, having some sort of protocol standard to be able to do the integration. Very important. And then, the other one is in this, and you didn't call this out, but this is important, the capability to orchestrate and manage agents. That's a huge problem. It's workforce management for digital workers. And they've started to go down the road here of building in the capability to manage those agents once they're deployed. That's going to be a huge issue as more and more companies have multiple agents across their business, and they're trying to figure out how they manage them, how they review them, goal them, make sure they're doing, the outcomes are correct, et cetera. So,
yeah. Is that part of the command center though?
Yeah. That's a part of the agent command center.
Okay. John, what do you think?
So the evolution here is emphasizing more the external services. You see AWS, Box, Cisco, Google Cloud, amongst others, facilitate through MCP. I'll point out that MCP is promising, but still a relatively new technology with a lot of questions on security and scale still. So this is an emerging area. I'm fairly bullish on MCP because one of the things about this technology is it's empowering the LLM agent to call various external tools and data sources to essentially make the LLM a little more, some people use the word grounded. I don't like that word, but it captures some of the sentiment around making the LLM a little more context aware of what's going on for a customer or situation. So you can use it to verify certain data. You can use it to bring in an authority data source or connect something. Then there's another standard A2A that has more to do with agent to agent communication. And I'm more skeptical on that because I think that's going to be tougher especially in the next year or two. Agentforce 3 will support both of those things. So it's really interesting. I mean, I tend to want to encourage customers to focus on the simpler things first, which is get some processes right and make sure that you're getting the right data. And to some extent, support for MCP can help with those more basic goals of getting some agents operational and showing real results is so important right now. The Engine customer case study is really quite interesting. I actually interviewed Engine and wrote about that, so you can check it out on my site. That's not totally a shameless plug. It's just more for the background if you want to really, because I don't have time to cover all that here. But what I will say is I went into the interview with a chip on my shoulder because Engine's a travel service, and I'm very skeptical about agents for travel. I know everyone thinks that's so cool. I actually think it's incredibly difficult to handle all the nuances of booking travel for individuals right now. But what was really cool about Engine is that they actually use this in a service capacity to attack the most frequent issues they were receiving that were handled pretty effectively by these agents, and they were able to establish metrics around that. And then what they did, instead of doing the whole thing that I dread, which is firing a bunch of people and going for headless headcount reduction exercises, instead they're enabling those same service agents to provide more VIP level support to certain kinds of customers. And they're really controlling the kind of issues that come in that the agent handles versus the more human related issues around more sensitive topics like last minute overbooking of a flight or something, where you don't want to deal with a bot for that. You want to talk with a human because you're at a friggin' airport and trying to figure out what's going on. So I really liked how Engine approached that very thoughtfully in terms of use case design. And that's a real key right now to making the most of this technology.
I think,
John, the other thing you mentioned 8 and I think that's important for a couple of other reasons. One, of course, is obviously you need to have agents work together, collaborate. If they're going to be digital employees, they have to collaborate. If they're from the same platform, that can be solved, right, without having to worry about standards. But when you start to talk about this workforce, Salesforce, passing agents back and forth, that's when you got a problem. If they can't work together, then you have a serious issue. And 8A is going to become more and more important as people go into this and deploy agents across different systems.
Yeah, and I think Ron raised a really good point in the chat, Sam. I think you should get to also, which is concerns about explainability. Maybe someone else wants to comment on that because I think it's a really important point.
I was going to kind of get into the trust aspect a little bit. I see that, being the two biggest investment areas is that, reasoning and explainability, what do these vendors need to invest in over this next couple of months in order to kind of increase that adoption from customers. But what I think is interesting from the command center, and probably a little bit to Ron's point, is, the ability to kind of get, performance dashboards for the success and failure rates, or just log events of the agent activities. It can be quite compelling for customers. I think just being able to see that can help gain trust and increase adoption. And then tying up to model context protocol, I think it's interesting that in theory going forward that these agents can hypothetically communicate with an Oracle ERP agent. We'll see how that goes, but overall I think this is very interesting. But to the point, explainability has been a huge barrier in terms of adoption, from my opinion. I don't know if you guys have seen it any other way.
Well, it ties directly into that idea of having a system that helps you coordinate and manage. Sure. Part of reviewing an agent's performance is understanding why it did what it did. The other thing is also, how do you define what failure is and what does it do when it fails, right? So, how much autonomy you're going to give it? What are humans doing? And the last one is failure modes. And you have to be able to manage all those things. So there's always going to be some question around some black box issues with these, but the more explainable, more transparent it is, the better it is for the company that's trying to manage those agents.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that, that Ron used the phrase full explainability. I would argue that that's actually not achievable with this generation of the technology. You're not going to get that. But what you can get is some partial explainability in a couple different ways. I don't think the reasoning aspects are actually very good at explaining the reasoning. There's a lot of research coming out on that right now. But what does work better is the tool calling and the RAG, the third party information that's being pulled in. You can do traces on that, and that you can show the user, here's where I'm sourcing the real-time information, which is often the most important thing the LLM is doing. And that is something that I think vendors like Salesforce are going to do a good job of showing people, and that is going to help. And the other thing, to Michael's point, is vendors are going to get better at the evaluation process. And so they will be able to show, okay, this is considered a successful routing or a successful action. And here's one that wasn't successful. And then you can start to look at, are there patterns in the ones that weren't successful and why weren't they successful? And so that needs more work, but there will be evaluation frameworks that customers will be able to look at.
Okay, guys, so I'm going to quickly read the comment for the audio listeners if they're wondering what the hell is going on in this conversation. So the original comment was, we'll see the new command center improves observability by providing real-time monitoring and analytics. It still lacks full explainability. Any concern is that users can see what an agent did, but not always understand why it made a particular decision. Any more comments on this?
I think to my point earlier, that is a huge concern. I still think you need to understand, what the thought process was there, so that when it makes that recommendation and decision as a human, then when you're verifying it and then ultimately acting on it, you have something to talk about if things go wrong. I think that's a huge point and still a big issue today. That's the way I see it.
Okay, perfect, guys. If you guys don't have any other comments on that, we have one more comment from Josh. And Josh is saying upgrading the agent experience is a vastly underappreciated concept. Okay, it can yield better customer set and better employee set, and that's probably SAT, I guess, right? Two for ROI. What is that supposed to be?
Yeah, like
it's 2x ROI.
2x ROI, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the commenters are keeping it spicy, and these are great comments. Thanks all.
It's been great.
I would expect no less, but from these guys. But just real quick on that, I just wanted to point out that while there are some technical hurdles here, a big issue with customer service agents, again, is thoughtful use case design. It all depends on how do you want a better customer experience, or are you just looking for operational efficiency? And I think you have to decide on that. And then I'm rooting for companies that want to serve their customers better and create better employee experiences too with this technology. And if you make that your core emphasis, then this technology can enable that goal. But if you want to just reduce headcount and try to be ruthlessly efficient, then you can do that too. I just don't like your chances as much. And I'm worried that more companies are going to try that.
Yeah.
Perfect, guys. If you don't have anything else, Robert, do you want to move to the next one, or?
Yeah, so let's go to Accenture acquires SYSTEMA. I think this is kind of interesting. I know that Accenture has an industry X practice, and I know I spend a lot of time talking about industry 5.0 and things of that nature, and I think it relates a little bit to that. But this MES system that SYSTEMA has, they're buying it to have more automation available for their clients, specifically, obviously manufacturers, et cetera, but and to advocate for the industry X's practices, smart factories. But I'm a little surprised on the acquisition because I didn't see Accenture, as an acquirer of this type of company, but I would see this company being acquired by somebody. And Sam, maybe you can kind of tell everybody the difference between ERP and MES. And I know MES is going to be more focused on the manufacturing components and the execution strategically versus ERP. But Sam, what do you think about this? We'll kind of go to you first. And maybe Charles, I know you could have a big opinion as well.
Yeah, so I don't know about the correlation, to be completely honest, where that is coming from between the ERP plus MES and the story. So ERP and MES distinction, Robert, in my mind, is going to be when you are dealing with the operational aspect of manufacturing. Mm-hmm. And sometimes operational could be all over the place as well. But when I say operational, meaning those are going to be product-specific aspects, manufacturing-specific aspects. Either it could be some sort of translation that financially ERP systems are not necessarily designed for. So you sort of hijack the manufacturing process. You do that inside MES. Then you kind of come back to your ERP. If you sort of know what you are doing in your architecture. Sometimes that could be all over the place as well. So that would be that distinction. But here, this is more of the semiconductor acquisition. So in this particular case, I guess, my take on this was, this is more of the data center play, just because you have so much high demand. That's why everybody is trying to get into that business. This would be the ERP processes or the business processes for the semiconductor industry. In general, that is very small, I would say. There are only very few companies.
Yeah.
It's very unique the way it works. 90% of the ERP systems, I don't even know if they work for semiconductor industry.
So you're saying that, just to kind of clarify, that my view is that ERP systems would have this technology inside of it if you had a sophisticated ERP. So you're saying that this is more for the semiconductor industry, that the ones that are using ERP they're missing some features and functionality that this is warranted.
So my take on the story is that this is the acquisition for the semiconductor expertise that Accenture is trying to exploit. Because they are a consulting company and they are trying to consult on different business processes, different business systems. So first they need to change the processes, then hopefully they can change the systems as well. But 90% of the out of the box systems that are going to be available, they are not going to be as good in general. Because nobody cares for this industry, I guess, just because it's just too small.
What's on one thing on my mind is, how is Gupta ERP going to respond to this?
Oh man, John, I'm telling you, it's just going to be, you are going to have every single business process. You are not going to have any sort of change management problems that Robert always talks about. It was specifically designed to address those problems that never ever. And by the way, we are not going to have any.
There is no change management problem with the ERP.
No people whatsoever. Zero people. No payroll.
So nobody gets paid.
That can scale. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, Brian Summers not bullish. He's not bullish on this one.
Well, I think it's very interesting to know here that the semiconductor industry, they typically were the leaders in terms of adopting MES technology. Being that it's very complex production processes, and to Sam's point, a little bit of the negative part here is that there aren't really too many semiconductor manufacturers out there. It's kind of a small playing pool there. But ultimately, with SYSTEMA's, experience connecting these legacy factory equipments to modern manufacturing execution systems is quite strong. I think as semiconductor industries are continuing to lead, in terms of adoption and deployment of certain technologies in the MES space, I think this is just Accenture's way to kind of keep up with that pace and ultimately maybe steal some new customers or help customers adopt AI agents within the manufacturing space, even though that's very, very far away. I think with those type of blue collar processes, but at the moment, I think it's just bringing in that semiconductor expertise, which is quite complex, and bringing it in house to Accenture. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, I was gonna jump on Brian's comment, because I think that's actually what I was thinking too. Is we know this is a problem, and yet of course a lot of large SIs are buying software products because they're trying to bundle these things together into some kind of a solution offering. But historically, to Brian's point, it has never worked out very well. Will it in the future? Maybe, but I'm not so convinced here when I look at that.
Don't you think that companies need to stick to their core competencies? They have a niche. That's what Accenture is. They're a large consulting company. Buying a software company for resources, fine, but to run the software side, probably, to everybody's point, not going to be successful. That's why I was surprised that they were bought. But
yeah.
Sam, do you want to read Brian and Josh's related comments on this, and then I'll chime in?
Yeah, I definitely want to do that. So this is for the comment on the story. This is the SYSTEMA is the company Accenture acquired. And Brian is saying, careful folks, and Brian is so right. Brian is saying, have you ever seen a consulting firm do a great job running a software company? You could do a whole show on why those deals are so problematic. In fact, this is what they teach in the MBA schools, and they clearly don't know what they are doing in those schools. We all know this, right? Okay, more comments, guys. Sorry.
I've actually seen a lot of that kind of an uptick in some of those consulting companies getting into things like supply chain planning. So now that is a good point. I have seen a bit of an uptick of that kind of happening, but interesting to see how long that lasts for.
Okay, so John, do you want me to read this one, Josh comments as well? Okay, so Josh is saying what Brian said, consulting firms are where software companies go to die a painful and tragic death.
So yeah, and
It's not wrong.
and just real quick, just to add one other context to this, and I don't know a lot about the inside aspect of why this deal happened, so I just want to be clear about that. And Brian and I usually trade places in terms of who's grouchier about a topic. I think Brian wins this. He's grouchier than me on this. But Brian knows way more about Accenture, by the way, than I do. I won't go into Brian's bio here, but you could check it and you'll find out.
Yeah.
But anyhow, the one thing I will point out is that the consulting vendors like Accenture are facing some pressure from quote unquote AI services. And one of the biggest ways to protect against that is to deal with this concept of distribution shift, which is that LLMs are not trained on all stuff equally. And one of the things LLMs are not trained well on is specialty areas like this. And so if Accenture is thinking more about that they want the subject matter experts at this software firm and they want to train their AI systems on the data that they've accumulated around this industry, if that's what they're banking on, then it gets a little more interesting because firms like Accenture have to move further and further from generic consulting to domain-specific industry plays. If this helps Accenture to do that, then perhaps it is useful in some ways. But like folks are saying, if Accenture is going to become a software provider, that's a whole different can of worms.
Yeah, guys, some more comments. I'll cover those. And Robert, I don't know if you want to cover one more story, we can do that. So just some more comments here. So Jeremy
through this
is saying bond buybacks. I don't know where that comment is coming from. Do you guys have any context? What is that?
Jeremy's going to have to add a little more.
Yeah, please do that, Jeremy. Okay, so we have one more. Systems and organizational analyst is equal to my role. So I think he's trying to introduce himself. Pleasure to meet
Hi, Jeremy.
you. Hey, Jeremy.
How you doing?
Okay, so Josh, there is a special chapter on this phenomenon in my forthcoming book. Okay. Josh's extremely thin book of successful acquisitions.
Looking forward to that one, Josh.
I'd be curious.
At least it'll be a quick read.
Yeah.
I would love to see a meme series on that. Hey,
Yeah.
Josh, you might be open to that. Okay, Jeremy saying, I'm a long-time study of perspective biases. Yes, even in SMEs. Is inertia SME role
He's
saying?
talking about your bond buyback. I think that's what
Okay.
he's responding to.
It's
I think.
So, Charles, do you want to add some more there? What that
No,
is?
no.
For the audience?
I'm not really too sure what he's getting to here specifically. I was just trying to help you out there.
Yeah, let's move on from the question.
maybe you should move on to the next one. Yeah.
Okay,
That's
all right.
moving on.
Okay, let's do that. All right. Okay, so I'm actually going to remove this comment. All right. So we can probably do one more, and then we are probably going to be close to our time.
Yeah, so I guess we'll talk about how Campfire raised 35 million, Series A. You might be familiar with them as an ERP company. Gupta ERP, are you guys competitors?
I mean, they are definitely not even close to Gupta ERP. I'm telling you this right now.
I'm really looking forward to that quadrant, Sam. That's going to be great.
Yeah. But I mean, I was really interested in covering this particular story because I want to know a little bit more about them, what they are doing, and how this space is going to change. So I don't know how much time we are going to have, but this is definitely very exciting and interesting.
Yeah, and we might want to, table till next week. But I mean, this is one of those new ERP systems that we've been talking about, and formatted around agentic AI and to compete with some of the bigger companies. Just take a quick step back. I think it's going to be extremely hard for companies like this to have the trust and the ability to sway companies away from the top 10 vendors. And I think it's from my perspective, those top 10 vendors are there because they deserve to be there. I mean, they have fantastic software, but there's a lot of legacy clients, and there's a lot of change management and fear to move to packages like this. So I think it's a huge bridge.
Since I'm not going to be here next week and my moniker is John ERP, I do feel a need to comment briefly on this topic. I think I'm rooting for vendors like Campfire. We need more diversity and competition in the ERP space, and And I'm impressed so far by some of the, like you said, Robert, some of the customer wins they've achieved have shown that there is room for some trust in this space and new vendors and new approaches. So that's all good. And I think they're a vendor to keep an eye on. The things we should pay attention to, though, are that the established ERP vendors are not exactly clueless when it comes to investing in AI technology. And this notion of agentic ERP at the moment is a little bit of a misnomer. I don't want agents anywhere near my core transactional systems when it comes to processing transactions, especially in compliance-based industries. And my research on Campfire indicated to me that the big LLM engine is more around the reporting and the predictive modeling and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's going to be really interesting to see how well they do. I would argue they should do a little better job of explaining how the different components work, and when they use more deterministic workflows and when they use more probabilistic, and because buyers are getting more sophisticated about that, and just saying it all runs on AI, I don't think that's the right marketing approach. But I'm going to be tracking this vendor. I think they're interesting and well worth giving a look to.
Yeah, to that point, I think what happens when you take the AI agents away from this platform, what offer does it really have as compared to some of those big established vendors in the space? I think these is also kind of getting a little competitive in terms of startup ERPs. I don't know if you guys have heard of Rillet before as well. I believe they just raised some Series A funding. They're another AI native ERP solution. So I think the space is getting quite competitive in terms of organizations being able to build it, and thinking how easy it is to develop software now with tools like Claude Code. I see a lot of these new startups coming to light. I would predict them more being acquired by the larger vendors and seeing how their AI capabilities are brought in-house.
That's what I think is going to happen. There's going to be a pretty significant role of acquisitions in this space and these larger companies, and going back to that build, buyer, partner type of a thing that we talk about.
One thing that was sorry, go ahead, Michael.
I was just going to say, I do think there's going to be, you're talking about disruption in existing enterprise apps. Of course, that's going to happen. It's going to happen a lot, and you're going to have a lot of startups going at this from different perspectives. How will that go? I mean, likely it'll go the way it always has. A lot of them get acquired. Some are very successful. Some, most get rolled up into one of the bigger players. But it's, ERP, all of the enterprise apps are ripe for some type of disruption as we go forward, I think.
100%. And one thing I did like about Campfire's approach, just real quick, is they already have some stuff up on SOX compliance. And so I like that they're working hard on the compliance aspects of this, because some of these AI startups are kind of playing it fast and loose with enterprise buyer mentality around risk and compliance. So I like that.
Well, let's wrap up, Sam. I think question I have for everybody: about 6 months ago, somebody came to me and they said, because I told them I specialize in ERP, and they said, I thought is ERP dead? I'm like, what are you talking about? So as we close out here, Charles, I'm assuming you all will have.
I'm going to say no to that. I'm going to say no. ERP at the moment is not dead. I think as these tools advance, the ERP systems are going to turn more into systems of action, right? In theory, that's the way it's going. We'll see how that journey continues.
Reaction.
Yeah, no, I think that's just a good marketing buzz. I believe Mr. Satya Nadella, kind of spearheaded that SaaS business is dead with AI. So, we'll see. We'll see.
John.
Yeah, I wonder how Microsoft Dynamics customers are feeling right now. It's a real vote of confidence from Mr. Nadella. No, SaaS in general isn't dead. Ironically, the discipline of moving to SaaS gives you a big leg up on this generation of AI getting started with it. So it's actually sort of in some ways the reverse. But hey, market disruptions are healthy. So I hope that some of the incumbents do feel a little heat from this.
And John, I guess we need to host a show here. It's probably going to be very interesting, I guess.
Oh wow, yeah, Sam. I don't know, man. It's tough. I already pulled all your data with APIs into my new AI startup, so it's going to be.
You already know everything now. All of my secrets, man.
Michael, what do you think?
I mean, I think that if you think about how this is going to evolve, and just look at enterprise apps in general, because do we need ERP? Yes. Do you need CRM? Yes. You still have to have these systems underneath. What do they look like 10 years from now? I don't know. But in the transition, a lot of the automation agents, all these things that can sit across the top of different data sources and create new ways to interact with it. That I think is interesting and certainly is a good bridge for companies that have the systems now. Am I looking at ripping out my ERP or am I looking at putting in agentic systems? I think I'm probably looking more that way right now, but certainly all these enterprise apps categories can be disrupted as more and more startups integrate native AI into what they're doing and move forward. So it's just it's a cycle. It's another cycle, right? We did this with client server. We did a mainframe to client server to cloud. We're just going to see a new evolution of those, I think.
Indeed.
Sam, you want to close us out?
Yeah, and I guess to your question, ERP is dead. I'm going to make some bold comments here. I'm going to say, are you crazy? Because now Gupta ERP is here, and Satya is going to have to learn about Gupta ERP now.
I mean, I do not think it's dead at all. Someone said that to me, and I thought they were like, way off. So
it's all good posturing for marketing and for conversation like this. So that's the way I see it.
Yep.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining. We meet every Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern. So I'll see you next week.
Bye, guys. Have a great week.
Bye.
thank you.